my Kenvians, PapaKen here, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discovering Torchwood. Today's episode that I'm going to be talking about is Greeks bearing gifts, which didn't make a lot of sense to me until I watched it the second time and got the, Greek mythology name or Greek philosopher, whichever it was. But this episode gave me feelings like right here for Tosh. Like, Tosh is this, well, she's not a delicate flower by any means, but I want to hold her, and I want to protect her, and I want her to be okay, because she's such... I love Tosh now. And my opinion of a few characters, well, at least one character has shifted a bit. One has remained mostly consistent. So, let's get right into it, starting with my favorite parts of the episode. And just so you know, in case you hear any background noise, my wife is watching football right now. Yeah, I'm wearing a jersey, I'm talking about Torchwood, and she's the one watching football. Pretty good marriage. Anyway, my favorite parts of the episode. To start with, Tosh. Like, just Tosh in general throughout this episode. I liked the character before. She seemed like a really cool character. Felt kind of bad for her in the previous one when it's revealed that the last person she kissed or snogged was Owen. And I felt happy for her in this episode when she was happy. I felt for her when she had to go through the abuse that she did, although, some of the abuse was because of things she could hear coming out of people's brains, obviously, but yeah, there was just so much about her character that this episode just brought me to love. And I'm pretty sure that, one of the quotes of this episode actually ties into just how much I enjoyed her character in this episode. But moving on from there, let's talk about my second favorite part of this episode, which was Mary. Yeah, I know she basically kind of sort of ends up being the bad guy, or rather she is the bad guy, but she makes Tosh happy for the most part. But yeah, Mary just as a character as a whole, it just really works for her. She was really enjoyable. Her personality was awesome. Like, she's a very strong, very confident personality. Even the personality back when we see her in the very beginning, I found rather interesting because, yeah, she didn't let that soldier boy beat her around at all. That's before she got possessed by an alien. But yeah, just Mary in general and overall, great character. Loved her with Tosh. If not for the fact that Mary ended up being evil, I would totally ship them. So yes. Moving on from there, my next favorite part of this episode, surprisingly for me, and the fact that I'm saying this surprises me, is the alien's CGI, like the computer graphics around this alien. And maybe it's because they used it so seldomly that maybe they just focused all of their budget onto this one creature for that span of 30 seconds or however long Mary's true form was revealed. But it looked really good, and it looked like, I don't know, it reminded me of a few sort of non-human designs, but humanoid designs that I've seen before. Not necessarily alien, just of different forms. And I found it to be amazing and strangely beautiful at the same time. So yeah, there was a lot to love about that, in my opinion. And again, I'm not one to usually have good things to say about the CGI in Doctor Who or Torchwood. Well, I guess I haven't really ragged on it in Torchwood too much so far. But I don't usually have that great of things to say, just because, they sometimes they just don't do a very good job. But yeah, I just thought it looked really, really good, and it gives me high hopes for some of the future CGI aliens that we might see. Unless they're on screen for more than 30 seconds, at which point they have to spread out the budget. Okay, moving on to my fourth favorite part of this episode was when Jack confronted Tosh and Mary. Just... Jack continues to... Like, he's been on and off through Torchwood so far. You know, just because of the fact that I've seen him in Doctor Who, and I've seen, you know, a little bit of him in Torchwood so far for the past 7 episodes now. Yeah, it's just like, you know, I've come to know the character. I love his character in general. John Barrowman by himself is awesome, but we don't always get like that true Captain Jack feeling from him, at least so far in the show again. But this episode is one of those where just he shows his true colors, and just the way what he does and says when he's confronting Mary and Tosh. Like, he recognized from the beginning, or at least really early on, that Tosh was acting off. When he says, "You ain't from around these parts, are you?" when talking to Mary. And it's just overall just done so very well. So well. So yeah, Jack confronting Tosh and Mary. Loved it. My fifth and final favorite part of this episode continues with Jack, and although since I've seen all of Doctor Who, well, all of the modern Doctor Who so far, I know what happened with Jack. I know the general idea of what happened to him. But at this point in the show, no one really knew like what was going on with Jack. People that had seen Doctor Who knew that he had died at one point and came back to life, but they didn't really know the ins and outs per se. So at this point in the show, you get another hint at what Jack is. Because Tosh wasn't able to read his mind at all. He was able to tell that she was sort of getting in there, like she was trying to read his mind. I don't know if that's specific to him, or maybe other people just can't tell that she's trying to read their minds unless like she's specifically focusing, because I think she was focusing on Jack, trying to read his mind. And that's when he was able to tell, whereas with Gwen and Owen, she was just listening. So I don't know if that has something to do with it, or if maybe Jack is able to tell if someone is trying to read his mind. I don't entirely know. I don't know what all his abilities entail, but I do like that, again, we got another hint at what Jack is, what's going on with Jack. And hopefully they'll develop it more, and I'll be able to learn more about him beyond just what I know about him from Doctor Who. So, looking forward to that for sure. And now it's time to get into my annoyances with this episode, and some of these honestly did make me not like this episode too much, but they were sort of central to how the episode worked. But anyway, my first annoyance was the ridiculous flirting with Owen and Gwen. I know that, you know, Gwen went to Owen because of what all was going on, but dear God, just if they're trying to keep it somewhat sort of a secret at all, they're doing a really bad job of it. But yeah, there was just so much ridiculous, nonsensical flirting going on that it honestly made me sick while I was watching it. Mostly because of how much I liked Gwen. I'm sure my like of her will return, but just in this episode, I could not stand her, and the flirting had something to do with it. That does bring me to my second annoyance with this episode, which is just Owen's attitude toward Tosh in general. I think that was alliteration. Well, no, close enough. But just his attitude toward Tosh in general Like, yeah, Owen is a jerk to everyone. He's just kind of, he's a dick. But my God, I wanted to shove my fist down his throat so many times in this episode that I just, not even when she was necessarily reading their minds, just stuff he said in general. I just, my dislike of him grows and grows all the time. So I'm hoping that as the season goes on, that might change, or as some people have told me, that they figure out that people were starting to hate these characters and give them a bit of a new spin in the coming season. But as it stands right now, cannot stand Owen. He makes me laugh from time to time, and he has likable moments, but overall just want to strangle the guy. But okay, moving on from there, my third annoyance with this episode, and it has to do again with the flirting, but Gwen's freaking obsession with Owen. And I can get how, you know, you have that sort of primal relationship with someone, how even if you don't love that person, even if you don't have really feelings for that person, that if they were ignoring you, that might affect you in some way. But dear God, Gwen, just her obsession with him. It's like, why isn't he looking at me? Isn't he thinking about me? Why isn't he looking at me? Hello, aren't you looking at me? I just, it was like freaking, it was like listening to someone back in high school, like some super jealous person back in high school, which makes me even more angry because she's in the relationship with Reese. If I don't know, just part of me wishes that if she was going to do that and she was going to obsess over Owen, she would have just cut it off with Reese. But I don't know, hopefully there's some redemption as far as that relationship goes before the season ends, otherwise I'm going to be really annoyed. But anyway, moving on from there, my fourth annoyance with this episode. Now, although I mentioned I really liked the alien CGI, before it was revealed, Mary gives this really terrifying growl, like a Zool growl, at Tosh when she mentions going to Torchwood and giving them the pendant. But then when she does transform, it's like it's this very, like, she doesn't use that sort of tone of voice anymore throughout the episode, even when she's being confronted. Like, she doesn't like turn into a growl to try and intimidate Jack or anything like that. It's just that one time, and it feels so out of place. Like, it could have been done with just Mary's regular, you know, just her regular voice, or even, you know, mix in some of the alien telepathic voice that we got with it, mixing that into the scene. But just the you know, Zool from Ghostbusters, like, no, or it felt out of place to me. And I don't know, I know they did it to sort of, like, you know, scare the viewer, like, you know, a little jump scare, but it just didn't feel necessary to me. Now, my fifth and final annoyance with this episode, and this, I recognize this is a nitpick, but that pendant gets, you know, it gets dropped, it gets, you know, sort of tossed away several times throughout the episode without any damage. But at the end of the episode, Tosh puts the pendant under her foot and, like, seemingly just sort of by dragging her foot lightly, completely shatters it. So that, again, it feels like Tosh sort of broke the law of physics there. Because, I mean, I was expecting her to, like, you know, lift up her foot and, like, crush it with the heel of her shoe, or something along those lines. But no, she just, like, she puts it under her foot and she, like, drags it, and it just shatters. And I just, again, especially watching it the second time, it just felt so strange. It felt so off to see that happen when it got sort of tossed around, not thrown to the ground or anything, but if it could break that easily, it should have shattered earlier in the episode. Or I don't know, maybe it's just so old that it finally gave out. I don't know. But yeah, so those are all my favorites and annoyances with the episode. Before moving on, obviously, I just want to say if you have any of your own favorites and annoyances with this episode, or even just specific points in the episode that, caught your eye, regardless of whether you would consider them a favorite or not, leave those in the comments down below. I would love to hear what you all have to say. But moving on, I do have some questions that came from this episode. One of which I doubt will ever be answered, but, it definitely won't be answered. But the other does, I think it's a legitimate question as far as this goes. The first of which is, what is it about Ianto that hurts? So, is it the pain he feels from losing Lisa? Is it something else? But when Tosh is reading his mind, he talks about how, he's thinking how much it hurts, and then he puts on a smiling face and just asks her if she wants any coffee. So I don't know. My only assumption is, based on his actions from the previous episode, are that it has something to do with losing his girlfriend. And it's still, he's being sort of, inwardly overly dramatic, in a sense. It's obviously, yes, such a thing like that is going to be traumatic, it's going to hurt you inside, but, I don't know, that sort of inner monologue to be having, because of that, feels like a bit much. Again, I could be just, being a bit insensitive there, or something along those lines, but, yeah, I'm legitimately curious what it is that hurts with Ianto, and if it's not Lisa, will that be revealed in upcoming episodes? But then my second question for this episode is, why does Mary have her obsession with cigarettes? I get it that, it's sort of like in a lot of, especially older movies, or when people are trying to be seductive in some of the older movies, even some TV shows, they'll be smoking a cigarette, but she's basically just a straight up chain smoker, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem to have any real relevance. She just does smoke. So, yeah, I just didn't really get that. Is it maybe like a cultural thing, or was she portraying supposed to be portraying a person from a certain part of the culture in the UK? If that's the case, please do let me know. But as it stands, I found the obsession chain smoking to be strange. That's all. But alright, moving on from those questions, I have actually 3 quotes from this episode that I really liked. The last of which is probably my favorite, but all of these all of these were really good in my opinion. And the first one comes from Owen when he's talking to Tosh, when he's not being a jerk for once, about how he'd been looking into stuff regarding the body and the stuff he had been looking into. But so I started looking into devil worship and stuff from that era, see if there's anything about plucking out hearts. And would you believe it, there's nothing. They ate eyeballs, they drank blood, they had sex with animals, but they did not pluck out each other's hearts, because obviously that would have been weird. It's especially the last line of that is what makes that quote for me. Because obviously that just would have been weird. It makes sense to me, and it makes me laugh, so that's why it's one of my quotes of the episode. But my second one is actually from Jack, and it's part of when he's confronting Tosh and Mary. A friend of mine, let's call him Vincent. That was his name after all. Regular guy, girlfriend, likes a sport, likes a beer, starts acting a little strange. A little distracted. Suddenly he disappears for a couple of months. He comes back and we've got to start calling him Vanessa. since then, I've always been a little nervous when a friend behaves out of character. And I realize it's kind of a long one to mention for this, but just that little story there, regardless of whether it's made up or not, well, I mean, you know, it's a show, so obviously it's made up to some regard, but, you know, whether or not that actually happened to Jack's character, an actual friend of his, it's so brilliant, and it's like, okay, it's the epitome of beating around the bush. It's like, you know, going around the bush, going around the bush, going around the bush. I've always been a little bit nervous when a friend starts acting strange, referring to Tosh, after this long spiel. But that's another part about Jack that I absolutely love. But then finally, and this goes back to my first favorite part of the episode, which is Tosh. And it's a line from Gwen, like honestly one of the few parts of this episode, sadly, having to do with Gwen that I really liked. And, well, it's when she's talking to her afterward, you know, when they're talking about how, you know, Tosh heard all the things that they had been saying in their minds about each other. She found out about the affair, so on and so forth. But Gwen says to her, "Don't let this put you off. The last couple of days you've had a look about you. Love suited you." And that's part of what just really solidified for me just how much I really enjoyed this episode because of Tosh. Because of the fact that in this one episode, with this character who, again, I liked her, she had been enjoyable in the other episodes, but finally getting to like really see into her life in this episode, I got to feel I felt happy when she was clearly happy in the episode. When she was scared, I felt that. And that's on the actress, that's on the story writing, in my opinion, and also it has to do with, you know, being empathetic, obviously, but I hope that the character Tosh does find someone that makes her happy, someone that she loves, because I don't want to see her go through more crap like this. I don't want to continue to see her get heartbroken by that son of Owen. And yeah, I want her to be happy. And she had a look about her. Love suited her. And hopefully that happens again through the show. But anyway, that is... Oh, wait, I do have a theory. Sorry, I almost forgot about that. One thing that I noticed while watching the show is that Jack gets on the phone with the Prime Minister, and he's talking to him. It's like we don't get really hardly any of the conversation, but my theory is that Jack's conversation with the Prime Minister, while seemingly just a background detail, or not even a detail, just something offhand in the background, one of Jack's many things that he does, that's going to become relevant in the future, possibly in the upcoming episodes. I don't know if they'll have like a flashback to, like, you know, him talking to the Prime Minister, and I'll be like, oh, so that's what you were talking about, or anything like that. But I do think that conversation will be relevant in the future, possibly this season, or I would hope this season, otherwise I'll forget about it. But yes, that theory, whether or not it will hold water, just have to wait and see. But alright everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Discovering Torchwood. It just dawned on me that I have not yet revealed my overall feelings for this episode. I might just leave that in because it's awkward and it makes it easier to not edit it out. But my overall feelings for this episode, like I was saying before, there were a lot of things I really, really liked about this episode. Tosh and Mary and Jack just made this episode for me. Most of all, Tosh. There were the downsides, and they... honestly, as much as they annoyed me, like with the flirting and the Gwen's obsession with Owen, it really annoyed me, especially upon second viewing, because it didn't make it any less annoying and painful to listen to. But the good parts of this episode, in my opinion, by far outweigh the bad. Again, this brought me to have a true... a true idea of who Tosh is. I feel for her now. I feel like I'll be able to relate to her as a character more, and that by itself is amazing for me in regards to this show, because again, it had been 7 episodes and I liked her, but now I have a true affinity for her. I truly do like her as a character and a person. So there you go. So yeah, thumbs up for the episode despite some of the problems. But alright, finally actually ending this episode. Thank you all so much for joining me for this episode of Discovering Torchwood, and I will see you all next time for They Keep Killing Susie. And I'm going to assume that's Susie from the first episode? So yeah, that should be interesting. So yeah, I will see you all next time for They Keep Killing Susie, and until then everyone, I am Papa Ken. Allons-y!